This video is sponsored by Incognito. Hello Internet, Seth Skorikowski, or I should say any award-winning Seth Skorikowski. My channel just won the Silver Innie Award for 2025. I don't have the actual medal yet, it's somewhere in transit to me as I missed this year's Gen Con. So a huge thank you to everyone who voted. This now makes the third win for my channel, meaning that the tabletop RPG industry has recognized me for years of high quality and helpful content. So to celebrate, let's just do something a little bit less highbrow and more fun. I haven't done one of my bad player character lists in just like forever. They used to be a staple of my channel, but I figure this occasion calls for it. So today let's talk about character gimmicks. I've brought them up before in a previous video, and they are a great way to make a character instantly memorable and stand out. You know, some personality quirk, like they're meticulously clean, or they're obsessed with their appearance, or have a ridiculous mustache or a weird laugh. They're prone to outrageous claims like, "This axe was given to me by the Tsarina of Tokyo." Or they have some weird item on them, like a parasol that keeps the sun off of them. Maybe they're a character flaw, maybe they're just simply character flavor. But the important thing with character gimmicks is that there's something that is added to a fleshed out character. You know, we still have a personality, motivations, personal description. The gimmick is merely icing on the cake. Now that is different than a gimmick character. These are characters who are all icing but with very little to no cake. They have stats and character abilities on paper just like a normal PC does, but everything else about them is just simply a gimmick. Or if maybe they have a little bit more, but the gimmick is just so overpowering that everything else about them is lost. The gimmick is their defining trait. Now, for a one-shot adventure where you're only going to be using this character, one time and we never see them again, or if you're playing in some sort of just total gonzo, silly campaign, yes, gimmick characters can work. Have fun, carry on, but in a long-term campaign with very serious roleplay. Okay, mostly serious. I mean, we're still playing imagination time with math rocks after all. Gimmick characters don't work at best, and they become detrimental at worst. I've talked about two of the popular ones before in some dedicated videos, the lone wolf character who is just a terrible fit for a group game, and the fish out of water outsider who doesn't fit in and never will because their whole shtick is about how they don't belong. Now, either of those concepts can be workable if the character is willing to evolve or adapt, but because these are gimmick characters, they do not evolve or tone down because the gimmick is the character's entire identity, and changing them ends up negating the entire character. Okay, so let's get started with one that I might personally hate the most. The bully, or more aptly, the total asshole. These are popular characters to watch on a TV show. They're often fan favorites with bullying snark, and they get away with dickish behavior that just makes our jaws drop. And since they're popular to watch on a show, many naturally assume that they'd be popular at a table, but that is not the case. Tabletop RPGs are not movies or TV shows. They're interactive, and bullies are just awful to interact with. First, why would the other player characters put up with this unlikable ass who's always looking for an opportunity to insult or attack them or antagonize every NPC that they meet, losing them patrons, getting them into fights, arrested, or just thrown out of town and bars? After a long journey, your characters arrive at a roadside inn. A few of the local guards are sitting at a table drinking with their captain. I'm going to walk up to that table, take a swig of that guy's beer, and be all like, "You're in my seat." Damn, not again. I'm going to run up and try to stop him. "Settle down, dingus. I'm getting us a table." Eventually, this resentment of the problematic character can bleed into resentment of the player, more so when that line between the character is being a dick to the other characters to the player is just being a dick to the other players begins to thin a little bit, and we risk some character versus character conflicts devolving into player versus player conflicts. Shockingly, few players can play a bullying ass of a character without either being an ass at the table or having the rest of the table interpret that as them being an ass to them, which is just as bad in the end. After all, if the character is unlikable, then no one should be surprised that no one likes that character. And if the game master and the players, they do not like that character, then that gets old very fast. Now, an example of a TV character who was a bully but evolved because there was more to that character than just the gimmick is Steve from Stranger Things. Now, he's a dick at first, but that quickly tones down once he's in the situation where he joins the group, making him a fan favorite, not because he's a bully, but because he's a well-rounded character. Next, and what I imagine is going to be the most controversial of everything on this list today, the complete moron. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Incognito. No matter how safe you try to be, your personal data is out on the internet and for sale. Data brokers will buy and sell everything they can. Your address, email, date of birth, education level, financial information, buying habits, social security number, everything. And anyone who wants to buy it can buy it. Scammers, identity thieves, stalkers, burglars, anyone. Now, one of the big threats out there are people's search sites, where for a small fee, anyone can buy your private information. And being an online personality myself, this is a legitimate concern of mine. And while those companies don't need your consent in order to sell your information, they do have to remove it if you ask them to. The problem is there are hundreds of data brokers out there, making it impossible for any one person to contact them all. This is where Incognito comes in. Simply make an account, authorize them to work on your behalf, and they get to work in not only having brokers remove your information, but following up with them to make sure that it stays removed. And if you find your information on some website, then send Incognito a link through their custom removal tool, and Incognito will take care of it for you. So to help protect yourself from scammers and identity thieves, just simply click the link below and use the code SETHSCORE to get 60% off an annual plan. Let Incognito do the work for you. And now back to the video with the complete moron. Dumb characters are fun. Two of my table's most loved and epic characters that we still talk about even decades later were also hilariously stupid characters. It's a pretty low-hanging fruit to make a character fun and just instantly memorable, is just make them a dumb character. But it can also go terribly wrong when the character goes from having the gimmick of being an idiot to a complete moron gimmick character. And I really had to think about why those two epic and stupid characters work so well. Well, most stupid characters just end up crashing and burning to the point that I consider somebody pitching me an idiot character as being a pretty potential issue in the future. The first one of those characters, a half-orc barbarian, so memorable that I actually modeled Todd's voice after this character.
Haha, yeah, his name was Dante, and he was freaking hilarious. He even carried the bone saw for a little while, too.
That character encountered the first pitfall, and that's when the player ended up feeling really restricted by them. You see, the player, Dante's player, was extremely intelligent. He's a really smart guy, and he loved problem solving and figuring out how the party could navigate difficult obstacles and various puzzles. However, his character Dante, while clearly loved, could not do all that smart stuff that his player deeply wanted it to do, so the player found that pretty frustrating, watching everyone flail around with problems that the player considered pretty obvious to solve. There's a limited number of times that an idiot character can just have some sort of flash of brilliance and offer the correct solution. So after a handful of very memorable sessions, the player said,
"Yeah, dude, I love this character and all, but I'm just feeling a little bit hemmed in by him, you know? I just think I want to play somebody else. It's just, a little bit smarter."
So we smoothly wrote Dante out with him exiting the group as this new player character stepped in, allowing Dante to leave us as a very happy memory before he outstayed his welcome and our experience with him soured. The other pitfall with complete moron characters is the player, unable to join in the plot and the planning and thinking of all the stuff to get them through problems, ends up using the, I'm just a moron excuse to disengage from the game, letting all the other players come up with the plan and then telling that character when to act. Players who excuse themselves from the planning phase because, they're just too dumb also run the risk of not only disengaging from that session, but also from the larger game world. After all, why should the player bother learning all the details of the game world if their character is too stupid to know all that stuff as well? And the other players, they get sick of carrying all the responsibility, and the game master gets sick of this player refusing to engage under the excuse that it's just roleplay. Or, and this can be worse, the complete moron takes an active role during the planning portion. So while everybody is trying to figure their way out through some sort of problem, the resident idiot is over there throwing out just stupid ideas and making jokes to the point that it's just getting in the way and it's derailing all the good ideas that the other players are coming up with. And the character, of course, they're too dumb to realize that they're really just annoying all the other characters, and also the rest of the players who just want to figure out a plan or piece some clues together without some stupid distractions and interruptions just getting in the way. They just want to get back to the game. Now, in my experience, this isn't much as being intentional on the player's part, as much as it's just simply the path of least resistance. It's an easy way to play a moron. And I'm sure out there is some lazy or bad player who might decide to play a complete moron character with the intention of using that as an excuse to be disengaged or just annoy the rest of the table with their dumb antics, but that is a problem player rather than a problem character issue. Now, with our other epic and super loved character who is just an idiot. He was a cyberpunk rocker boy. Technically, he was a gangster rapper, and he was comically stupid in a very serious campaign. It was actually the Relay campaign that I've talked about before. But as I was going over him and kind of recounting everything about him and trying to figure out why it was that that character worked so phenomenally over the course of about a year-long campaign, that I realized that that was not a gimmick character at all. Yes, he was extremely dumb, but there was a lot more to him than that. He had other quirks. He had defining personal goals that he was always working toward and changing and trying to always kind of have his character go along a certain path. His personality was very fleshed out, and very importantly, the player and the character were always engaged in the game. Sure, his ideas during planning sessions were usually pretty damn terrible, but they were also pretty damn funny. But he didn't just rapid fire out a bunch of dumb ideas and plans as jokes or become a distraction during planning phases. Usually he would just have, one dumb suggestion that he realistically sounded like something that character would have thought was a great idea, as, everybody else was brainstorming, and then he would let the other PCs shoot them down because the character thought, well, we're all kind of coming up with this together. I threw out my idea. They didn't like it. Okay. Now, I confess that I always did feel a spike of terror whenever the other players considered this character's dumb ideas, but he was a rich character who just happened to be a moron. But he also proved that morons can work as very loved and long-term characters if they're approached as fully faceted and evolving characters. And if the player isn't constantly trying to derail the game and steal the spotlight for a cheap laugh. He also completely changed my mind about rocker boys. They used to be my least favorite character roles in Cyberpunk. I did not think that they worked well at all, but the very best Cyberpunk character that I have ever seen in my life just happened to be a rocker boy. Now on to number 3, the joke character. Now, many gimmick characters are joke characters to some extent, but these aren't cases where the character is taking some normal character quirk or flaw and then just pumping that up to 11 with no personality beyond that. What I consider a joke character is when the character is literally based off some stupid joke, like a pun or a meme or some ludicrous thing that's, good for a cheap laugh for about 15 seconds. Like basing your character off the Swedish chef and you speak mostly gibberish. Sure, that's a pretty good chuckle to imagine, but it also starts getting old very, very quickly. The problem with joke characters is even the funniest joke in the world starts getting stale. And if your entire character is just simply a joke, then when that joke is going to get tired. Joke characters are very popular for people to talk about online. I'm completely positive that somebody has already written in the comments. Not gonna lie, that Swedish Theft adventure idea sounds hilarious. I am totally stealing that. Bork, bork, bork. Joke characters are really funny to imagine, but the reality of playing alongside one of those for longer than the chuckle of just imagining how zany they sound, that is a different matter entirely. So if they only speak in song, or grunts, or only say one word, or, maybe they're an orc war chef, like an orc war chief, but chef, pot and pan armor, dual wields a skillet and cleaver, and if that's literally all there is to that character, then like any joke, it gets stale. They must evolve or have more than one note to them. Otherwise, you really just made a silly NPC instead of making a player character. Again, if you're doing a one-shot or some wacky gonzo game, you're probably going to be fine with that. But in a long-term, serious, mostly game, joke characters are already problematic because they're inherently unserious characters. There needs to be something beyond the gimmicky joke here, because the character's entertainment value, it's just going to be on a timer. Now, maybe they should have a new joke or a new spin on the joke, or maybe Crom willing a deeper personality, but the character needs to evolve or adapt before their punchline wears out. And finally, the Sniveling Coward. This one should be self-explanatory, but evidently it isn't. Sniveling Cowards are fraidy cats who run away at the first sign of danger or even just potential danger, abandoning the rest of the party to deal with the problem and hopefully not die because their companion abandoned them. Now, there is nothing wrong with characters running away or retreating. I want to make sure that I get that said. I run Call of Cthulhu. That's like pretty much standard for that game. The problem is not the character retreating or falling back in the face of some insurmountable danger. It's the fact that they run away at any sign of danger whatsoever. They don't have any sort of, I'm afraid, but I must push down my fear to protect my friends and stop this threat. Nope, they just simply run away. Bodies and broken lab equipment litter the floor. At the far side of the room, you can see a steel door, its LED keypad glowing red. And you got that keycard to unlock that door, right?
It's on my sheet. A half dozen of these like 2-foot-long centipede-like things come scuttling out of the shadows, and some of the corpses, their mandibles are kind of foaming with some sort of caustic slime. What do you do, Mike? Ah, damn! Quick, everybody, and I run across to that locked door.
Okay, and how about you, Todd?
I am right on his heels.
And Dweebles, what's your character gonna do?
Well, screw this. I'm running back out of here. Did that dickhead just run away with our key? I'm going to close and lock the hatch behind me. And he trapped us in here.
First, if your character is terrified of absolutely everything out there, why are they even here, venturing into dungeons and haunted houses and the fringes of charted space, or wherever it is that player characters go? Now, in a one-shot game, we can easily explain how this character ended up at this location and why they're here. But if we're doing a campaign with multiple adventures, why does this character keep putting themselves in dangerous places? And second, why in the hell do the rest of the player characters keep this Sniveling Coward around until they're just going to run away anytime anything happens? Having a character who's cautious, or even a coward but manages to overcome their fears in the face of adversity, that is fine. That is fun. But Sniveling Cowards are just an annoying liability. And unlike the total asshole or the complete moron gimmick characters, who are at least popular characters in movies and TV shows, and that explains why a player might mistake that would work well and be popular in a tabletop role-playing game, Sniveling Cowards in movies and shows are usually the antagonists who just, abandon our brave heroes and then run headlong into danger only to get killed as the audience cheers. Everyone shows up at the session to play, so bring a character that isn't just going to run away from the game. It is exhausting for everyone at the table to have a player whose entire gimmick is essentially that they refuse to play the game that we all took time out of our lives to come here and play. Anyway, that is it for gimmick characters. They're fun as NPCs or characters who are not going to be around very long before they kind of wear out their welcome. But in a long-term game, a good player character needs to have more to them than just simple one-note shtick.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or RPG philosophy, just hit that subscribe button. And a huge thank you to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Make sure you hit him up at the link below for a 60% off discount and annual plan. Till next time, amigos, stay awesome. I really took this video to heart, so I decided that my next character, instead of just being a one-note gimmick character, I decided to round them out by combining all the gimmicks that we talked about in this video, right? So my next character is going to be Rectus Stankfinger, a bard flatulist who only speaks in farts. And he is going to be a total bullying asshole, but a coward. So he's always starting fights and just running away from them. And top that off, he is a complete and utter moron. Pretty funny, right?
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, he's going to be freaking awesome. I feel you missed the whole point of the video, brother.
Shh, don't worry. I'll handle this one.